Hello class, this is Mr. Beller coming at you from cyberspace. This is the first segment of a series of lectures that will make up the Revolutionary War unit. With this series of lectures that you'll see today, we will focus on the French and Indian War. The main idea that you want to grab from this lecture is that the British victory over the French in North America enlarged the British Empire. That's a good thing. The downside is that it led to new conflicts with the colonists. You want to know how and why the French and Indian War led to new conflicts with the colonists. Why does the French and Indian War matter? It matters because the events that follow the French and Indian War, this enlargement of the British Empire, making the Great Britain the dominant force in North America, it's the events that follow the French and Indian War that will ultimately lead to the American Revolution. You see on the left-hand side, or sorry, excuse me, the right-hand side, some terms that you would need to be able to explain. So, moving along, let's go ahead and get started. When we look at the French and Indian War, we want to look at some of the long-term causes. This is not just something that decided to sprout up overnight. This is something that has been going on, or this rivalry between France and Great Britain is something that's been going on for quite some time. In the 1750s, leading up to the French and Indian War, the major area of contention or the major area of dispute between the British and the French in North America was the Ohio Valley. The Ohio Valley is the area that's west of Pennsylvania and Virginia. If you think of the area that is modern-day Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, this would be the Ohio Valley. When we're looking at the Ohio Valley, why was it a point of contention? Because the colonists, all right, they wanted England to prevail. They wanted England to control the area because they, the colonists, wanted to expand westward. You notice that most of these settlements, in British North America, they were all along the water. And we have seen examples of the colonists expanding westward. And right now in the 1750s, had really stopped along the Appalachian mountain range. Lying west of the Appalachian mountain were the French, and the colonists wanted to control that land because it is very valuable to them. Lots of free land out there, lots of land that could be developed, lots of land that could be profitable as far as the fur trade goes. Now, the French, as we said, they had established their presence in the Ohio Valley and in Canada. And the French had they've been there for quite some time. You'll see that the French Empire in North America started in 1534, and in 1608 Champlain established Quebec. This is going to be the first permanent settlement in North America. This French colony is going to be known as New France. However, New France is different because of the following reasons. Number one, the settlers there had little desire to build permanent settlements. We don't see Jamestowns popping up. We don't see, Bostons or New York Cities. We don't see, or Philadelphia. We don't see these permanent settlements pop up in France. That's not what they're out to do. In New France, the colonists are more concerned with the fur trade, all right, and converting Indians to Christianity. And because of the fur trade, the third way that New France is different from the British colonies is that they have good relationships with the natives. And this is going to come into play when we look at the French and Indian War because the Native Americans will side ultimately with the French. All right, moving on to the next slide. We see that as the French Empire expanded to North America, it started to collide with the growing British Empire. Once again, going back to that whole idea that the colonists wanted to control that area, they wanted to move westward. And this is something that, once again, it didn't happen overnight. Before 1754, before the French and Indian War even broke out, there had been 3 separate and here's the key thing here, indecisive wars between the French and the British. And you could even throw in there the Spanish too. The Spanish, a lot of times during these wars for dominance in North America, they would side with the French. And these wars happened in the time period between 1700 and 1750. And once again, they were indecisive, so they never ultimately decided who was going to be the dominant European presence in North America. This is all going to change in 1754. In 1754, the French are going to build, if I can get my things right, the French will build a fort named Fort Duquesne. Now, this is in modern-day Pittsburgh. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. However, the problem with the French building the fort here on this land is that the Virginia governor had promised land to wealthy planters. The French have to go. And the Virginia governor will actually send George Washington to let the French know that their presence is no longer needed or wanted in the Ohio Valley. George Washington will build a fort of his own 60 miles away from the French Fort Duquesne. He will call it Fort Necessity. And in July of 1754, George Washington will attack the French fort. Unfortunately, this opening battle of the French and Indian War will be a loss for Washington and a loss for the British. But it is this action by George Washington that will start the French and Indian War. And now, during the early part of the war, 1754, 1755, 1756, the French will dominate this war. The British suffer huge losses, both in numbers of loss, soldiers lost, and in battles. Why do the British lose? Because they are not used to this style of fighting that the French and the Indians are using. The British are used to lining up and shooting each other, this more traditional style of military warfare, whereas the French and the Native Americans, they use more of what's called a guerrilla style of warfare. This is when you hide from the enemy, you ambush them all at once, and then you go back and you hide. The British are not used to this style of fighting. They aren't able to adapt to it, and in the early part of the war, this will cause large numbers of losses, both in the number of dead and in the number of battles lost. 1757 will be a key turning point here on the French and Indian War. It's an important year for the British because in 1757 they get a new prime minister, William Pitt. William Pitt is the prime minister of Great Britain. This essentially means that he's second in charge, only to the king in the British government. And William Pitt, important year, important person. He is going to assemble the largest and best equipped army the world has seen. He's going to do this by borrowing lots of money. And this is a key point here. Yes, good thing William Pitt is able to organize an army that will be able to contend with the French. It will be able to defeat the French. However, he does this by borrowing money. That money will have to be repaid later. A couple things here. We see that in the years leading up to the end of the French and Indian War, there's a couple key battles here that will allow Great Britain to claim victory in the war and claim victory to North America. The key battle happening in 1759. In 1759, the British are able to win at the capital of the capital of New France. They're able to win at Quebec. And when they're able to win at Quebec in 1759, this is going to be the battle that ultimately decides the war. The next 4 years, the fighting will be, it will be little skirmishes here and there, but no big turning points after the British victory at Quebec. Now, the second question here, how did Great Britain's victory change the balance of power in North America? With the Treaty of Paris in 1763, this will be the treaty that ends the war. Great Britain is going to be the dominant power, is the dominant power in North America. The French are essentially kicked out of the off the continent, or the French government is kicked off the continent. Spain still has some territory in Florida and in the western part of the continent. But who controls the continent now? Great Britain. And now with great power comes great responsibility, and this victory over the French and the Native Americans in 1763 will bring new problems. So, victory brings problems. So, claiming ownership of the Ohio Valley. Remember, this is what the war was fought over. That's going to bring problems with the Native Americans. The problem that we have with the Native Americans is that they don't want settlers on that land. The Native Americans depend on this land to hunt. They depend on the land for the fur trade, and they're afraid that if these British settlers are going to move west past the Appalachian Mountains and into the Ohio Valley, that they will scare the game off, and by scaring the animals off, their chances of survival diminish greatly. They don't have any food, and then their primary source of income, of making money with the Europeans, will be depleted as well. And so they don't want the settlers on this land for that reason. And to show how serious they are, in 1763, there's a guy, an Ottawa chief. He's a chief of a Native American tribe up there in what would be present-day Ohio. His name is Pontiac. And in 1763, he gathers Native Americans, to join together, to band together in resistance against this westward expansion of the colonists. This is known as Pontiac's Rebellion. With Pontiac's Rebellion, the Native Americans capture 8 British forts and kill and massacre a large number of British civilians or colonists. This is a problem for the British government. The king has to do something to squash these growing tensions between his country and the Native Americans. So what does King George III do to solve this problem? He issues a proclamation, the Proclamation of 1763. The Proclamation of 1763 bans settlement past the Appalachian Mountains. So essentially, King George III draws a line down the east coast of North America and says anybody that's going west and anybody that's going past the Appalachian Mountains, you're in violation of this law, this Proclamation of 1763. And remember, the whole purpose of the Proclamation of 1763 is that the British are trying to avoid future conflicts with the Native Americans, and they try to do this by banning settlement past Appalachian Mountains. The settlers are frustrated. They're angry. This is what the war was fought over. All right, why can't we reap the benefits of our victory? And so this is one of the first instances where you see the colonists disagreeing with British policy. This is one of the first examples of the British ending their period of salutary neglect and going back to being more hands-on in their approach of dealing with the colonists. Stay tuned for the next video. The next video will look at why and how did Great Britain end the period of salutary neglect, who was George Grenville, and we will also take a look at what's to come after. Thanks and stay tuned.